First time having an undefeated non-conference schedule. Exercised that one. First time going 4-0 since 2000. Got that one out of the way. And now that little devil down there, not a devil, a Tar Heel in Chapel Hill, that North Carolina demon is off Pitt's back as the Panthers defeat North Carolina in Chapel Hill for the first time ever, not just since 1990 or 1991 or since 2000 or any of those other things. The first time ever Pitt defeats North Carolina in Chapel Hill. They get a 10-point win, a 34-24 win, a game where the defense played bend but don't break to the extreme because they bent a whole lot but didn't quite break. And the offense always had a response. The offense missed some opportunities. The offense missed some plays. The offense left some stuff on the field. But when it came down to it, every time North Carolina did something today, every time they got close, every time they picked up a little bit of momentum, Pitt had a response. Every time. And as such, even though the game was like a one-score game up until Pitt's final field goal that made it a 10-point game, I mean, it was never more than a one-score game. It was 3-0, 7-3, 10-7, 10-10, 17-10, 17-17, 24-17, 24-24, 31-24. Up until the final 2 minutes, it's a one-score game all the way through, but it felt like Pitt was in control start to finish of this thing. Even though the score was never really all that far apart. It was tied multiple times. It was tied at 10, tied at 17, tied at 24. But Pitt always had a response. And so it just felt like they were in control. And, more often than not, you felt like Pitt was going to find a way to get it done. I felt like Pitt was going to find a way to get it done. That offensively, Pitt was going to be able to come up with play after play after play. And that's what they did. Came up with play after play after play. And the end result, Eli Holstein throws for 381 and 3 touchdowns, runs for another touchdown, gets 76 yards on the ground. Desmond Reed has a monster game, 210 yards of total offense, scores a touchdown, catches 11 passes for 155 and a score. Konate Mumfield has a 100-yard game with 111 on 3 catches. Huge game for Mumfield, made big plays all over the place. Raphael Williams catches a touchdown. Sincere Lee catches a touchdown. Had a couple big catches, including on Pitt's game-icing drive. Caught an 11-yard pass on 2nd and 8 to help that thing keep moving along. Dejon Reynolds comes up with a 10-yard catch on 3rd down on the final drive. It's a 3rd and 7, and Dejon Reynolds out of nowhere. 1 target, 1 catch, 10 yards. To help keep that drive extended. Just a big game all around from Pitt's offense. I mean, tons of huge individual performances for Pitt's offense in this game. And then Pitt's defense just coming up with plays when they needed to come up with plays. I mean, like I say, bending but not breaking. You look, what did Carolina have? They had 416 yards of total offense, rushed for 147, threw for 269. Amarian Hampton goes for 106 and 23 carries. Jacoby Criswell throws for 269 and a touchdown. But even with all of that, they had one other. Who was it? Nate McCollum, 10 catches for 128. But even with all of that, the second half, Carolina only rushed for 26 yards. So they had 121 rushing yards as a team in the first half. The second half, Pitt held Carolina to 26 yards on the ground. That's the kind of bounce back performance. And I'll tell you what, when this game at halftime, what was the score at halftime? It was tied at 17 at halftime. First of all, I said, well, that's a good thing that Pitt's not in the lead because they've had a lead in each of their last 4 trips to Chapel Hill. They've had a lead at halftime, and they've lost all 4 of those games. But setting the superstition aside, I really kind of felt, and like, we talk about adjustments and this and that. I really felt like Pitt was probably going to come out in the second half and do a better job defensively than they had done in the first half. And I mean, we could go back and look at the Cincinnati and West Virginia games. Obviously, we know that Pitt's defense and offense stepped up in both of those games to get those comeback wins. But I think there are plenty of times, and it's not 100%, but there are plenty of instances where Pitt's defense in particular has come out in the second half and played better over the whole course of the second half than they did in the first half. And I think statistically, and I think it backs up by what I think it backs up what you saw on the field. That's what they did. 26 rushing attempts, or 26 yards on 12 rushing attempts in the second half, 2.2 yards per carry on average. Omarion Hampton finishes with 106 yards. I think he had like 89 or 90 in the first half. Clamped him down. And clamped down, but there's a lot that you sort of read into it. It's not just Hampton's success rate, but also time of possession, how long Pitt was on the field, how many opportunities Carolina had to run the ball. I mean, Pitt won the time of possession by 3 minutes in the second half. But if you look in the fourth quarter, they held the ball for 10.5 minutes. So they played keep away to a large extent and kept Hampton from beating them in the second half there. But I think it's remarkable to see Pitt's defense give up 416 yards and they'll only allow 2 touchdowns. Only allow 2 touchdowns. And you look at Carolina's drives. First drive of the game, they go 3 and out. Next drive is when they go 19 plays, 81 yards. They take 9 minutes off the clock, and Pitt stones them at the 9. Stops them at the 9. They go for it on 4th down at the 9, and they fail to get it. Hampton doesn't get the first down, and Pitt takes over. So 81 empty yards right there. Nothing to show for it. Next drive, they get a field goal, then they go 3 and out. They drive for a touchdown, late in the second half, or late in the second quarter, I should say. 10 plays, 73 yards. But then you come out in the second half, third quarter, they turn it over on downs. They go 3 and out. They get a touchdown drive, and then 2 straight turnover on downs plays. And so Pitt's defense gave up 2 touchdown drives, 3, you could say 3 long drives plus a 58-yard drive. But ultimately, they more or less, you can't say they held Carolina in check because they gave up more than 400 yards of offense, but they only gave up 2 touchdowns. So when they needed to make a play, they made a play. Carolina in this game was 5 of 15 on third down. Pitt, conversely, which we talked about third down so much earlier this week, Pitt's offense was 9 of 16 on third down. And in the second half, let me just double check and make sure my stats are right here. In the second half, Pitt was 8 of 10 on third down. 4 of 5 in the third quarter, 4 of 5 in the fourth quarter. Like, talk about stepping up and making big plays. And it helped them extend the drives in the fourth quarter when they were trying to put the game away. It helped them run clock because they stayed on the field. They extended those possessions. And again, 8 of 10 on third down in the fourth quarter is better than they did. They had more, or 8 of 10, I should say, in the second half. They had more third down conversions in the second half today than they had in the West Virginia and Cincinnati games combined. They had 5 third down conversions in the West Virginia and Cincinnati games combined. 4 against Cincinnati, 1 against West Virginia. They had 8 in the second half alone. They had 5 third down conversions against West Virginia and Cincinnati. They had 4 in the fourth quarter today. Stepping up, making big plays, getting plays when you need them. And I think that was what you saw here today, time after time. That's why every time Carolina started to get a little bit of momentum, started to get things going in their favor, Pitt had an answer. Pitt had a response, either defensively to get a stop or offensively to answer with a score. And that was what they did. That was how they went. You can look down sort of the score sheet. Pitt scored first. Obviously, Carolina, on Pitt's second drive, got the pick 6. But when Pitt scored again to make it 10-7, Carolina answered with a field goal to tie the game at 10-10, and Pitt answered right back with a touchdown. Carolina scored a touchdown before the half to get to make it tied at 17 going into halftime. Tar Heels got the ball to start the second half. They turned it over on downs, and Pitt scored a touchdown. So pretty much the next time Pitt, they had 4 plays before the end of the half, but their next full drive after Carolina's touchdown tied the game at 17, Pitt answered with a touchdown. Carolina scored a touchdown to go up 24-17. To tie it at 24. Pitt, the very next drive, marches 75 yards on 11 plays and scores a touchdown to take the lead again, 31-24. And then they get the turnover and downs, and then they drive 18 plays, 73 yards, 7 minutes, and they get a field goal to make it a 10-point lead. So every time Carolina scored, every time Carolina tried to get momentum or started to get some momentum, Pitt had an answer. They never let Carolina have any hope. They never let Carolina build up any kind of energy in what looked like a half-empty stadium, and they controlled the game. It wasn't a dominating win. They didn't dominate the game, but they controlled the game. And if you don't throw a pick six, instead of it being a 10-point win, it's probably like you take away the touchdown for Carolina. That makes it 17. You give Pitt at least 3 points on a field goal, if not another touchdown. You're looking at like a 20-point win or a 24-point win if they don't throw that pick six. So that really was what made the game seem as close as it was. But I don't feel like, Carolina, I sort of imagine the end of this game, Mac Brown and Pat Narduzzi meeting at midfield, and Pat Narduzzi walking up to Mac Brown and saying, "What are you smiling about?" And Mac Brown said, "Dude, I almost had you." And Pat Narduzzi saying, "You never had me. You never had your car." Of course, that wouldn't. I just noticed that I have the wrong headlines up in the top of the screen. That's why I lost focus on my Fast and the Furious reference. But oh well, doesn't matter. I was like, why are there still pictures up there that are not from the Youngstown State or from the North Carolina game? Either way, Pitt wins 34-24. We're here. It's the Panther-Lair Post-Game Show on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Make sure you like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel so you never miss any of our Pitt video content. We got a lot of time tonight where we can settle in and talk about this win. Some people might be filtering in at 8 o'clock. I initially announced that we were going to do this at 8, and then I moved the start time back to 7:30, so maybe people were a little late filtering in. But we'll be on a long time. We'll have plenty of time to talk about this game. Get your comments and questions over on the right side there. As always, if you want to make sure we read your comment and answer your question, you can be a super chatter. There's a little $sign down at the bottom below the chat screen. Click that thing, kick a couple bucks to the podcast, and show your support. We appreciate that. We'll make sure we read your comment or your question. We'll try and get through as many as we can tonight. We got a lot of time. Like I say, we're going to settle in. It'll be a lot of fun. But of course, the super chatters get priority. So if you want to be a super chatter, I'm guessing the guy who took my betting advice when I made my ACC picks, I'm guessing that guy won't be a super chatter tonight. Since I got the Syracuse game last night, I got the Pitt game today, but I was wrong on like every other game. I said Boston College, I said Louisville, I said NC State. Just blew like all of those. So, sorry. Hope you didn't put too much. Although if he showed the betting slip, the $10 bet with the parlay on like the 8 picks or whatever it was, 9 picks, it would have paid like $3,000 or something. So that would have been sweet, but unfortunately it didn't work out. Sorry, guy. All right, you might have noticed what I'm wearing. It's pretty sweet, right? Look. You like it? The old Pitt is it 1976 national champion shirt. You know where this is from? It's from Home Field. Homefieldapparel.com is the place to get the best Pitt shirts you're going to find. This one is awesome. They rock. Pitt is it. It's super soft, of course, because Home Field stuff is always on the best high-quality material you can get for T-shirts or sweatshirts or any of those things. But it also looks great. You know what I mean? Like high quality, looks great, feels great. And as always, if you go to homefieldapparel.com and use the promo code PIT24 for your first purchase, you get 15% off. So you get the best looking Pitt shirts. And look, Pitt is winning. So you want to get more shirts, more T-shirts, sweatshirts, jackets, koozies, hats, all the different things they have at Home Field. Go to Home Field, get the sweetest Pitt gear, get it for 15% off with the promo code PIT24. You can't lose. You get the best looking Pitt gear, or any school you want, because they have almost every school in the country. And it's on the softest shirts, high quality material, and you get it for a discount. 15% off. PIT24 is the promo code, homefieldapparel.com. All right, let's see if we're getting people filtering in here with the comments and the questions. Yeah, there's a lot coming in. Got super chatters and lots to talk about here. Oh, Mark Shillaju says it. Shot. That's right. We got to do it. Our Backshore Apparel shot of the game. This is Backshore Apparel. Now, Backshore is a company owned by a Pitt fan. Mike, big Pitt fan, sells beach tech. Sorry, I hit the mute button. You might be like, what is beach tech? This is the kind of stuff you wear to the beach or you wear when you're out golfing. You're out in the sun. It's still sunny out. It's fall at Pittsburgh. That sun is blazing down. And you want good beach tech, go to Backshore Apparel. Panther-Lair.com. And Backshore sponsors our shot of the game, the Backshore shot of the game. And I didn't think about this ahead of time. What could be the Backshore Apparel shot of the game? I tell you, oh, you know what it is? Oh, yeah, of course. The Backshore Apparel shot of the game. Guys, Sean Fitzsimmons. Sean Fitzsimmons comes back, plays his first game of the season after being out, missing the first 4 games due to injury. He finishes with 2 tackles, like 0.5 tackles for loss, but officially 3 quarterback hurries. Now, when you're on the road, those road stat crews aren't always inclined to give everybody the hurries and the tackle assists and all those things. Sean Fitzsimmons finished with 3 quarterback hurries, and I think his impact was felt throughout this game. People online were, people on Twitter during the game were debating with me about how effective Pitt's pass rush was in this game, said it was good or it wasn't good or whatever. I thought it was pretty effective and impactful, even though they only finished with 1 sack. A lot of people said, what are you talking about? The quarterback's got tons of time and all this stuff. We could talk about that here. We can debate it. Sean Fitzsimmons had a big game. And Sean Fitzsimmons added something to the defensive tackle rotation. And that's without Nick James out there. When you bring James back in, you've got Nick James and you've got Sean Fitzsimmons. Francis Brew continues to develop, and Nakai Johnson as, rounding out that 4 and Elliot Donald as the 5th. Like, you might start to have something at defensive tackle. You might start getting some productivity and some impact plays out of the defensive tackles. Sean Fitzsimmons came back. I think he made an impact throughout this game. He played a ton, and I think he played really well. So, Backshore Apparel, shot of the day. Sean Fitzsimmons getting after the quarterback and making what should be a positive impact on this defensive tackle rotation. Yeah, Shay sat down a little bit. Woo! Yeah, it was an off week last week, so I've lost my momentum with the Backshore Apparel shot of the game. But Sean Fitzsimmons, huge bring back, huge addition to the defensive tackles and the defensive line. Big piece of the puzzle, and I think he did really well. Made a big impact. All right, Bill Florigen's a super chatter. We'll jump into it. First big game, I was more worried with the defense than I was with the offense. No big stands or 3 and outs until the end, but I guess you can't discount that. Well, so, I kind of already went through some of that stuff, Bill, before I read your comment. But, if we talk about big stands for the defense, right? So, let me see. So the first drive, Carolina's first drive, they go 3 and out. They had a holding penalty on Carolina. You're allowed to call those, apparently. That was Carolina's first and only holding call. But Carolina goes 3 and out on their first drive. They get the pick 6 on Pitt's next drive. When Carolina got the ball back is when they drove 83 yards on 19 plays. When they get all the way down to the Pitt 9, and they attempted to throw on that play. Actually, I said they stopped Amari and Hampton. They didn't stop Hampton. They tried to throw on that play. I don't get that. I think 4th and 2 from the 9. I'm not sure why you don't hand it off to Hampton. I think you probably feel like you have a pretty good chance of making that. But they stuff him there. And, huge stop. That's a huge stop. They're at the 9-yard line, and they come away with no points. They drive 19 plays, 81 yards. I wrote down 83 because I thought they started the 10. I wrote down the wrong number. 81 yards on 19 plays, and they come away with no points because they have a big defensive stop. Carolina gets a field goal on their next drive. Pitt stops them inside the red zone. They go 3 and out on the drive after that. They finally drive and get a touchdown, so Pitt gave it up there. First drive of the second half, they force them into a punt. Actually, they force Carolina's got a 4th and 6 at the Pitt 42. They go for it, and Pitt stops them. So another big stop there. They get a 3 and out on the next drive. The drive after that, Carolina scores, but Pitt scores to answer and make it 31-24. This is when Carolina drives to the Pitt 8. This was the turnover on downs after Pitt scored to make the score 31-24. Carolina drives down to the 8. It looks like they're going to score to tie the game and, make it really interesting as we're down, in the final 10 minutes of the game. Carolina gets to the 8. It's 4th and 1. They go for it again, and Hampton gets stuffed. And this was a big play for Sean Fitzsimmons. Sean Fitzsimmons takes up 2 blocks, opens the opportunity for Brandon George to get in there, and they make the stuff on Hampton, stop him for no gain, and then cause the turnover on downs. So another big stop there. Pitt got the ball and obviously went down, kicked the field goal. Carolina gets the ball back, and Pitt makes the stop on 4th and 2 with the Kyle Lewis sack. So it's a game where, like, if you were watching, you're watching it, particularly in the first half, and you're like, Pitt's defense is getting shredded. But they kind of didn't. Yes, they gave up 400 yards, but they gave up 185 yards in the second half. That's a lot. It's what? That would be, put you on pace for 370 in a game. That's a lot, but it's not terrible. And again, they only gave up 2 touchdowns. This defense stepped up time and again. Twice on, just think about what I just recapped there. Twice, Carolina went for it on 4th and short, 4th and 1 or 4th and 2, inside Pitt's 10-yard line. And Pitt stuffed them both times. Pitt stopped them twice. I think that's a remarkable stat and a huge testament to this defense. I mean, you talk about them not making any big stops or not making any big plays. I think they made big plays throughout the game. Bend but don't break, which is not atypical for this defense. We've seen Pitt's defense over the years, not just this year, but over the years. Bend, but don't break. Give up these longer drives, but make stops. Have 2 long touchdown drives, 3 long touchdown drives, but make a lot of stops, make a lot of big plays. The thing they were missing here, they didn't have any, they didn't get the turnovers. You would have liked to have seen something. It was funny. I think it was it was Carolina's final drive. It was a first down play from the 39, and Criswell threw a pass, and Rasheem Biles almost picked it off. I mean, Biles was right there for it, right? And it's funny because Narduzzi on Thursday said that was his challenge for Biles. He was like, how about going to get some interceptions? Because I said to him that Biles had told us before the season he wrote down some goals for himself, but he's had to cross those goals off, and because he's already met some of them and he has to create new goals. And Narduzzi said, well, maybe he didn't set his goals high enough. How about getting some interceptions? Biles almost had one. He almost had one. I don't know if he would have scored a pick 6 on it, which was Narduzzi's other challenge. I think he was kind of losing his footing, but the ball hit him in his hands. So there was an opportunity there for Biles. But I think they stepped up and made some big plays. I really do. And if you want to tell me that you watched this defense in this game and you're just concerned. They're just, they don't consistently stop other teams, or if they face a good offense, they're going to get gashed. I mean, okay. I kind of see where you're coming from. There were times where I watched this defense today, and I said, wow, Carolina's really pushing them around. They're going up and down the field on them. But here we are. It's 5 games in, and in every one of those 5 games, the defense, even if they've shown some vulnerabilities, maybe not in the Youngstown State game, but overall, if they've shown some vulnerabilities from Kent State, Cincinnati, West Virginia, and today, they've still made all the plays necessary to get to 5-0. Now, they give up 24 points today, but lucky for you, this isn't 2023. And giving up 24 points to an opponent is not a death knell for Pitt. This Pitt offense can score more than 24 most days. If Pitt's defense last year, to a certain extent, 2022, 2019, Pitt's defense had a very small margin for error. Pitt's defense had to hold the opponents to, 21 or less, 19 or less, 18 or 17 points to give the team a chance to win on a regular basis. There were occasional outbursts. You could even go back to 2017. There were occasional outbursts. 2019, they scored 35 or whatever it was to beat UCF. So, I mean, there were outbursts here and there. But for the most part, the defenses in those years, 2017, 2019, 2022, 2023, the defense had to shoot for keeping opponents to 17 or less because they couldn't consistently rely on Pitt's offense scoring more than 17. Well, now maybe that margin for error has shifted a little bit. Now maybe Pitt's defense doesn't need to put itself under such... I mean, they're going to put themselves under a ton of pressure. They want to give up 0 points every game, 0 yards and all that stuff. But if they give up 17, I think you'll still be okay. If they give up 21, I think you'll still be okay. If they give up 24 like they did today, you've still got a pretty decent chance of winning because this offense is just that good. It's just that effective. I tell you, there was a sequence that I love. Oh, here. It was after Carolina made it 10-10, right? So Carolina makes it 10-10. Pitt gets the ball at the 25. It's first quarter, or it might have been the second quarter at this point. Yeah, it's the second quarter. 7 minutes left to go. First play, it was when Holstein slid and they called targeting on the Carolina kid. They overturned the targeting, but they kept the roughing. So Pitt gets 15 yards there. Rodney Hammond runs for a yard. Holstein throws incomplete. Then on 3rd and 9 from the Pitt 47, he throws to Desmond Reed in the flat. And Reed gets 23 yards on that play. Or 20, yeah, I think it was 23 yards. And like a lot, I mean, huge credit to him. He made the play, but it was set up so well. It was designed so well that Reed really only needed to make like one guy miss to take off and get that big gain. And on the very next play, they have first down at the 30, and it's just a perfectly drawn play to Raphael Williams, who gets the easiest 30-yard touchdown pass in history. And that's not to take anything away from Raphael Williams, because I think he's capable of high degree of difficulty plays, but he got the easiest 30-yard touchdown pass in history because it was set up so well. It was just a well-designed play, well executed. Maybe Carolina blew the coverage, but I'm going to give the credit to Cade Bell. This offense is really good. You know, and they've got, I think they have this really excellent marriage right now of very talented quarterback, super talented running back, receivers who are really good at executing the scheme, and then they've got a play caller who I just think, I mean, he's really on his game right now. And not every call is perfect. Not every call is going to work exactly right, and there's a million reasons why some play calls do or don't work. I coached a flag football game today. My sons are on the flag football team, and like the head coach wasn't there, so I had to do the job myself and call the plays. And like I know, like, I wanted to run this hitch and go. I wanted to run this hitch and go, and it was set up perfectly. And I knew, like, I was like, guys, this is the play. This is what we're going to do. You're doing this and do this. This is actually a quarterback. We're going to throw it right in here. This is where we want to throw it. This is when we want to throw it. And we ran the play, and the receiver ran the route perfectly, and he was wide open, and the quarterback threw. It was supposed to be a hitch inside and then go. Quarterback threw just a regular hitch outside. And so sometimes the plays just don't work. I guess this is my point. You can call a great play, and sometimes it just doesn't work. There's 11 moving pieces on any of these plays, in college football, NFL football, whatever it might be. And so, some guy, it takes one guy messing up his assignment, and then it gets messed up. But by and large, I think Cade Bell has done an outstanding job. I think you give him an A grade for his performance thus far, what he's done with Eli Holstein, how he's utilized his weapons, the offense he has called. And it's the reason Pitt is 5-0 right now. It really is, because the defense is not as good as it's been over the last 9 years at Pitt under Pat Narduzzi. It's still pretty good, but it's not as good as it's been for a variety of reasons. But they have an offense that can make up for it, which when the defense was slipping in any other year, I mean, I guess 2016 would be the other year where the defense was really kind of a vulnerability under Narduzzi. And that year they should have had the offense to make up for it. But the thing with that offense is that it was so run-based that if you couldn't really... And yeah, they had short drives and big plays, but you weren't quite as designed to score in a hurry because it wasn't as much of a passing-based offense. This year's offense is. The 2021 offense was. The 2021 offense could score what you needed them to score in most cases. The 2021 offense, if you gave up 24, they could score 20, 28, 35. This year's offense feels the same way. That if you gave up 24, okay. And again, the defense only gave up 17, right? The defense gave up 2 touchdowns and a field goal. One of those touchdowns for Carolina. The other touchdown Carolina got came off the pick 6. So, I think this defense... Bill Flurgeon, big, long answer to your question, but this defense, I think, is playing at a pretty good level. They're having success right now. NEC Blitz is a super chatter, says, pretty good year for the Lambert Trophy to come back, isn't it? Pitt is 5-0, Penn State's 5-0, Army's 5-0, Navy's 5-0. I'm drawing a. Oh yeah, the Lambert Trophy went to the best team in the East of college football. I forget, was West Virginia involved there? Syracuse was. I mean, Syracuse just got a good win last night. Yeah, and West Virginia as well. And did West Virginia pull off the win? Should have my box score open. Oh, wow. Clemson's already up 17-0 on Florida State. Holy cow. Bringing up the Big 12 scoreboard. Yeah, West Virginia crushed Oklahoma State on the road. So, West Virginia now 3-2. Not quite 5-0 like Pitt and Penn State and Army and Navy, but it's a pretty good spot to be in right now. I just saw a comment. Day G's says the defense is horrible. I don't see how you could say the defense is horrible right now. Like, we're not going to go too far down this road. First of all, I just laid out all the big plays they made to win this game. But, like, Kyle Lewis is a first-team all-Narduzzi outside linebacker. Like, if you were to put together the best 11 defensive players of the Narduzzi era, Kyle Lewis is a first-team all-Narduzzi outside linebacker. And Rasheem Biles is almost there, too. Like, he's just behind Kyle and Johnson. Really. He's almost there. Brandon George might not be on the level of Servassier Dennis, but Brandon George is having the best season of his career, playing really well. Safeties, I think, Donovan McMillan. I don't know if McMillan's a first-team all-Narduzzi safety, only because they've had DeMar Hamlin and Paris Ford and Jordan Whitehead and Brandon Hill and Eric Hallett. I mean, that position has been loaded for years. And so that's a tough one to crawl into the top two. I don't know who the top two are. I don't know if McMillan is in the top two or not. The corners are young and new, but I think they continue to play better. I thought they were okay today. Look, were there busted coverages? Were guys left open? Yes. Has that happened every year of the Narduzzi era because it's football? Yes. Have, by and large, Battle and Ryland Gandy been fine? Yeah, I think so. The biggest question mark for this defense is up front. And I think Nate Matlack continues to be solid. I think Sincere Edwards is taking steps forward as a true freshman. I think Jimmy Scott is okay. I don't know if they're getting much out of Chief Borders. And then the defensive tackles, like I say, I mean, there's a potential for this group to really take some big steps forward. This defensive tackle group, now that you've got Sean Fitzsimmons back, and I think he played really well today, you're going to get Nick James back, I would think, at some point from injury. He didn't make the trip to Chapel Hill, but you would like to think he's not going to be out too long. I think Francis Brew is like Sincere Edwards. Those guys just every game, every half, every quarter, every drive, every play just seem to be taking steps forward. This defense is probably going to have more games like this. Games where they get beat a bunch, but they stiffen up and make some plays. And like if Pitt's horrible defense goes out and just gives up 17 every week, Pitt's going to like the playoffs. You know what I mean? Like if you watch that game today and you say Pitt's defense was horrible and it was a game where they gave up 17 points. Like, I'll take that kind of horrible defense every day, won't you? I mean, 17 points? 17 points wins you every week, particularly with the offense that Pitt has right now. I don't think the defense is horrible at all. Do they have areas that they need to improve? Of course. But horrible is a horrible exaggeration. John Christofich says, hit the bottle, Chris. John, we already did, man. I don't know if this is going to be a two-shot show. So, but we'll keep drinking the can. Benjamin Glazer says, it felt like a game Pitt was in control of from the beginning. I never thought they would blow it, primarily because of Eli Holstein. Out of remaining Pitt games, it seems like SMU should be the biggest worry outside of Clemson. Yeah, I mean, you don't overlook anything, and certainly nothing is going to be an easy win. And I'm not going to assume anything against Cal. I'm not going to assume anything against Syracuse. I'm not going to assume anything against Louisville. I'm not going to assume anything against Boston College, even though they lost at Virginia today. I'm not going to assume anything against any of these teams, but yeah, as we look at it right now, SMU 5-1 with the touchdown win at Louisville today. and then Clemson up 10 on Florida State. I think, that those two, as we sit here right now, look like the toughest games on the schedule. And I think we always assumed Clemson would be one of those toughest games on the schedule. I think we thought SMU would. I started having some doubts about SMU early in the season. I don't have any doubts anymore. Taking care of business at Louisville is no small task. I've been pretty high on Louisville since the preseason. Now they've lost a couple in a row, so it's maybe some question marks creeping up there. We'll have to look more. I didn't get a chance to catch much of the SMU Louisville game to see what really happened there, how they ended up losing or how SMU won. But maybe Louisville not quite as stout as I thought. Although at the same time, I think they're going to be a heck of a test for Pitt. They're going to be a big challenge for Pitt. I think that game is down there. And I think Jeff Brom is really good coach, one of the best coaches in the conference. And so that game's going to be a tough one. That game is going to be a challenge. But yeah, SMU and Clemson right now, as we sit here on October 5th at 8 o'clock at night, look like the biggest challenges. Now, if Cal goes out and blows out Miami tonight, well, maybe we start talking a little bit more about that Cal game next Saturday. But for now, yeah, I would agree with you. Clemson and SMU seem like the biggest challenges. Let's see. Oh, we got a super chatter here. Who jumped in? Kurt46 says, getting Sean Fitzsimmons back was huge. He had an immediate impact today. Need to protect Desmond Reed at all costs. Onward and upward, still cautiously optimistic. I think as Rodney Hammond gets more and more back into it, and I know he's been part of it all along, and he was practicing in scout team and stuff like that, as you incorporate him more back into the offense, you should be able to get out of games without having to have Desmond Reed touch the ball 30 times. He had 18 carries and 11 receptions. And he caught every single one of his targets too. Although they didn't charge him that almost interception on the final drive. I wasn't sure who they credited that as a target to. Reed ended up getting close to it, but he made the play of the game maybe by breaking up that pass and not letting it be an interception. But no, so 18 carries, 11 receptions. I don't think you want Desmond Reed getting the ball 29 times in a game. I think as you get Rodney Hammond more back up to speed, it'll be, I think you'll have, maybe more opportunities to spell Reed and keep him fresh. I mean, you saw he's come out of every game with some kind of injury. You know what I mean? He has left the field at some point limping. I think in every game. I forget if it was the Kent State game, but certainly Cincinnati, West Virginia, this game, he's coming out limping. So, I mean, I don't think he's fragile. I don't think he's injury prone. I just think he takes a pounding, and he definitely doesn't shy away from contact, not in the least. And you got to be smart about that kind of thing. You got to be smart. Let's see here. Josh Newark wants to know, did Mac Brown quit yet? No, I don't think so. This was just a tough loss. And that was my thing about Carolina going into this game when we talked about where their psyche might be or where their spirit might be or whatever. I wondered if they'd be up for this game because they give up 70 to James Madison 2 weeks ago. They get a 20-0 lead on Duke and then blow that and lose 21-20 this past weekend. I remember thinking, and I said it early, I said it throughout the week, if they just had one of those games, they'd probably be in a better place sort of mentally and emotionally. But having those two losses, gut-wrenching losses, both in different ways, both in particularly heartbreaking ways, I think that's a little bit tougher to come back from. And I, you could say what you want about whether or not they came back from it well, but that was tough. This was just your average run-of-the-mill loss. You lost by 10 in a conference game. The other team played a little better than you. It didn't have any of those extra sort of heartbreaking storylines, like a 70-point where you give up 70 to the opponent, or you blow the 20-point lead or something like that. It didn't have any of those. It's just an average loss. So I don't think Mac Brown is quitting after this game, but maybe if they give up 70 again. Bobby Fitzmaurice says this program completely misses Charlie Partridge, his coaching and presence specifically. Absolutely minimal pressure from the defensive line. He wouldn't stand for it, but 5-0 is feeling amazing. Well, the only thing I would say about that is he was here last year. And I don't remember Pitt's defensive line doing all that much last year. Now, some of those guys, Okunlola and Jules in particular, would look good on this defensive line, and it would help to have them. But Charlie Partridge was coaching the defensive line last year. That it wasn't like he wasn't here when the D-line was struggling last year. And then on top of that, I think you have to consider that the issues aren't all coaching. I don't think the issues are all coaching. I think some of the issues are personnel. I mean, there's a reason they had to go to the transfer portal to get Nate Matlack and Chief Borders and Nick James and Anthony Johnson. There's a reason that they're playing true freshmen right now. And David Ojebwe, too. They got all those defensive linemen out of the transfer portal. And part of it was because they lost Deion Hayes and Sam Okunlola and DeAndre Jules to the portal, and they had 3 seniors graduate. But I think when you look back over the last 3-4 years of recruiting, there's some drop-off on the defensive line recruiting. I'm sorry, I'm not sure why my computer is kind of freezing right now. I don't know if I have too many windows open, or maybe I should try and close a few of these things. Maybe it's slowing us down. Look, the reality is the defensive line recruiting fell off in the last 3 years. It did. The last 3-4 years, really. Because you could go back to the 2021 recruiting class that was Nikai Johnson and Elliott Donald and Naquan Brown and Dorian Ford. I mean, Johnson's still on the team, and he moved inside from defensive end to defensive tackle. Donald is still on the team, and he's playing. Naquan Brown's gone. Dorian Ford moved to the offensive line, and then he transferred. And then you could go back to the 2020 class. Deion Hayes transferred. Emmanuel Belgrave transferred. Sam Williams transferred. There were a lot of misses in the defensive line recruiting over the last 4 years or 5 years. And that's got as much to do with the current state of things as anything. And that falls on Charlie Partridge. And love Charlie Partridge. Great guy, great coach, great recruiter. But the last few years of recruiting was not his best. Now, this past year, where you bring in, Isaiah Neal in 2023, Sean Fitzsimmons in 22, Sincere Edwards and Francis Brew this year, and Jasir Whittington this year. I mean, he had some hits, for sure. But the current defensive line, at least upperclassmen, I mean, those were guys he recruited. And, would Charlie Partridge make a difference? Would it be better to have Charlie Partridge? Yes. Would he have necessarily fixed this issue or some of the issues they have? I can't say that for certain. There's a part of me that thinks, he bears some responsibility for the current state of the defensive line. So, but that's neither here nor there because they are where they are right now. They do need more production out of the defensive line, need more production out of the defensive tackles, and we'll see what they can get. Steak on the Grill says another resilient W. Eli is such a second half baller. H2 Pitt 5-0. Let's see. Eli Holstein's second half stats today. In the second half, Pitt had 120 passing yards. 11 of 21 in the second half. Here's some interesting stats. Eli Holstein, 11 of 21 for 120 and a touchdown in the second half. First half, 14 of 21, so 3 more completions for 261, which is 140 more yards, and 2 touchdowns, and, of course, the pick 6. So he is a baller. He is a second-half baller, but he actually played pretty well in the first half, too. And, does he take some chances? Does he put the ball out there and maybe put it in jeopardy a little bit? Sometimes, yeah. But on the whole, he plays pretty well. And he takes the kind of risks I'm okay with him taking. They haven't blown up on Pitt too much so far, other than the pick 6. But nevertheless, let's see. Josh Newark says, at what point can Pitt fans start thinking we might actually have a good team this year? Something special is happening in Oakland this fall. I mean, if you're 5-0, you got to say they're good, right? Like, I know Pitt fans are looking for, well, they screwed up the time management on the final drive, or the defensive line, what that guy said, the defense is horrible, or Eli Holstein takes too many risks or whatever. Look, Eli Holstein through 5 games has thrown, he's thrown 15 touchdowns and 3 interceptions. I can tell you that. And he has thrown, let's do some quick math here on his passing yardage. He had 1186 coming into today, threw for 381. So he's thrown 1,500 yards in 5 games, almost 1,600 yards in 5 games, plus 15 touchdowns and 3 interceptions. And in addition to the rushing, like, I feel like there's a lot to like about this team. Desmond Reed is one of the most dynamic playmakers Pitt's had in a long time. I mean, like, obviously they had Jordan Addison. They've had some really good running backs over the years. You go back to James Conner. You go before that to Dion Lewis and LaShawn McCoy, and you get to these guys, and there have been some really good players. And I don't want to compare Desmond Reed to those guys, but it's he's playing at a really, really high level. He's a playmaker. He's one of the best playmakers in the ACC right now. He's an exciting player. And every time every time he touches the ball, you kind of hold your breath because it could go a long way. I apologize that we're buffering here. I'm not sure what is causing the problem of why we're not getting a great signal, and so I apologize if you're running into that, but we're going to keep going. It's only been at this for 45 minutes. We got a long way to go tonight. Mark Shilaju says the defense took a step forward today. I thought Fitzsimmons was more disruptive than others in the interior defensive line. Yeah, he absolutely was. The defense officially recorded 11 quarterback hurries on official stats, which is a really high number. Fitzsimmons had 3, Nate Matlack had 2, Jimmy Scott had 2, and then Kyle Lewis, Brandon George, Francis Brew, and Isaiah Neal had 1 each. And so lots of quarterback pressures there. And so I said at one point, I think we might have sorry about that. I think we're really having trouble with our signal here. And I'm not sure what happened, but let's see if we're back. I think we're back. I apologize. I don't know what's causing our internet lags today, but I apologize for it. But I think we're good. I said at one point during the game, I said on Twitter, I was like, the defense it doesn't have any sacks yet, but I think the pass rush is as impactful as it's been at any point this season. And people are like, what are you talking about? They're not doing well. I actually thought they got after the quarterback. I thought they got after Criswell. I thought they gave him a hard time. I thought they were in his face. I thought they pressured him. They made him uncomfortable. They only got the 1 sack, Kyle Lewis's sack on the final play of the game, Carolina's final offensive play of the game. But I thought they got after him. And I thought it increased as the game went on. I thought they kept getting closer and closer and forcing him into rush throws and not giving him a chance to make the throws he wanted to make on the timing that he wanted to make them. And I just felt like they were being more impactful than they had been all season. Now, we gave the stat earlier this week that North Carolina's 2 offensive tackles, Sampson and Green, I think are their names, came into today like 2nd and 3rd in the ACC in pressures allowed, according to Pro Football Focus. So they were giving up pressure, and it should have been an opportunity for Pitt to get there. And I think Nate Matlack took advantage of it. I think Sincere Edwards got there a little bit. And then I think it opened things up for the defensive tackles to be a little more pressure-oriented, in addition to having Sean Fitzsimmons come back and the impact that he made. So I think this was a better game for Pitt's pass rush. I think this was maybe the best game that we've seen out of them in terms of effectiveness and the impact they had on the game. Did they give up good rushing lanes to Marion Hampton? Yeah. Does everybody do that with him because he's really good? Yeah. Did they stiffen up against him in the second half and only give North Carolina 26 net rushing yards after halftime? Also, yeah. They made the plays they needed to make. and whether they were taking Carolina out of their offense and Carolina couldn't run the ball the way they wanted to with Hampton, or if Pitt was making the plays, it doesn't matter. One way or the other, Pitt was causing Carolina to not have the success on the ground that they had in the first half and the success on the ground that they wanted to have all season long. This is a Carolina team that bases its offense on the run. Jacoby Criswell is a nice quarterback, but he's not Drake May. He's not Sam Howell. He's not Mitch Trubisky. He's probably better than Nathan Elliott. But they're not going to rely on him the way they relied on May or Howell or Trubisky to carry the offense. And like I said, this was a one-score game until Pitt kicked that field goal to make it 34-24. It was a one-score game. So until the final 2 minutes of the game, it was a one-score game. So Carolina never really had to abandon the run game. But I think Pitt's defense forced them to. And that's a major credit. That's a major credit to Pitt's defense, and it's a credit to Pitt's defensive line. I think they played well. Oh, a lot of people are saying that you're not having an issue with the buffering and stuff like that. Well, good. I'm glad it was only me, and I'm sorry you had to see that dumbfounded look on my face when I was, stuck there. But it erased a bunch of the earlier comments, so we'll have to jump ahead here. Maxwell Hahn says, which loss to Carolina hurt the most over the years, in your opinion? This one felt great. I mean, there's a bunch. Like 2022, if they beat Carolina, that year they go, 9-3 in the regular season. I think they make the ACC championship game. 2018 was an ugly one because that was a bad Carolina team, and that was the year Pitt ended up winning the Coastal Division. That was an ugly game down there. 2017, that was a Pitt team that was clinging to they finished 5-7. They would have made a bowl game if they could have held on in the fourth quarter against Carolina in 17. Obviously, we know how the 2016 game went. 2015 was a bad one. 2014, they had a lead in the fourth quarter. I don't know if there was a worst one, maybe 16. The implications of 2022, I think, loom large because, again, they could have made the ACC championship game if they had won that one. But I don't know. Probably 16. That was a pretty painful one. Let's see. Super chatter here. RJC Man 38 says, first time in Narduzzi's era, there were 2 games impacted by poor coaching decisions from opposing teams. Today was a solid win. What was the poor coaching decision from the opposing team? I'm not sure what you're referencing there. But I guess so. You gotta win, right? You gotta be the better team, whether it's out coaching, out playing, whatever it might be. ZC717 says, I'm becoming a huge fan of Kyle Lewis. He's becoming Narduzzi's best outside linebacker, or becoming one of Narduzzi's best outside linebackers he's had since he's been at Pitt. Well, I mean, the outside linebacker position hasn't been a position of strength at Pitt under Narduzzi. It really hasn't. Like, who are the outside linebackers you remember? Like guys like Mike Caprera, Sean Idowu, Elijah Zeiss. I mean, they were nice. Bam Bradley or Nicholas Grigsby. Like, they were nice players. They were fine. Not exceptional. I think 2019 when they brought in Kylan Johnson as a transfer from Florida, I think he was pretty good and was probably the best outside linebacker they've had. I think Kyle Lewis will supplant him as the best outside linebacker. Siracea Dennis was an outside linebacker, but he really became a great Pitt defender and great Pitt linebacker, playing middle linebacker. So we're not going to count him as one of the best outside linebackers Pitt's had. He wasn't that good as an outside linebacker, partially because he was young at the time. But I mean, if you're looking at guys like, those guys from the early years I mentioned, like Caprera and Idowu and Zeiss, you're looking at Kylan Johnson, you're looking, further up, Phil Campbell and Cam Bright, and, up to Solomon DeShields and, Shane Simon and Bengali Kamara. I know. Well, Kyle Lewis, I think, has surpassed all of them. I think he's playing at that high of a level. I think he's that good. And I don't think Rasheem Biles is that far behind. I don't think Biles seemed to have as big of an impact in this game as he's had in some other games. He's still finished with 8 tackles, third most on the team. 4 solo tackles. He had 1.5 tackles for loss, 2 pass breakups. But Kyle Lewis had 9 tackles, 2.5 tackles for loss. He had a sack. Pitt's only sack. He had a quarterback hurry. He's just playing at a really high level. Really high level. And it's why he doesn't come off he came off the field a bit today. Jordan Bass played probably more snaps than we've seen out of Jordan Bass in a while. But Kyle Lewis, I think, is the best defender on this team. He's clearly the best linebacker on this team and one of the best linebackers, if not the best linebacker Pitt has had under Pat Narduzzi. ZC717 follows up and says, it's not Pat Narduzzi's best defense since he's been here, but they just come up with big plays when they have to. And that's the thing. I mean, like, again, we went through the drives, and this might have been when you posted this comment. I mean, drive after drive, they got stops. They gave up 2 touchdown drives and a field goal drive. It's college football. If you give up if the entirety of your, what your defense allows is 2 touchdowns and a field goal, and that's okay. That's okay. Your offense should be able to outscore a team. If you hold them to 17 offensive points, your offense should be able to win the game. And this year, unlike last year, unlike 2019, to some extent 2022, 2017, this year, you can count on your offense to score more than 17. I don't think they'll have a game where they score less than 17. And so if you only give up 2 touchdowns and a field goal, you're in good shape. You're going to win. And so their defensive performance thus far, I think, has been good enough. They could be better. And I think there's still things they have to shore up. They have to do a better job at getting to the quarterback. I thought they got better pressure today than they have in recent weeks or maybe all season. They still only ended up with 1 sack, and it came from a linebacker, and it came on the final play of the game. So yeah, they have to do that. Coverage could tighten up a little bit. You'd like to see more turnovers. They didn't get any turnovers today. You'd like to see that number go up. And obviously the run defense is something they're going to have to continue working on. Although, again, they give up 26 rushing yards in the second half. And it wasn't all because they got a bunch of sacks and that cut off the rushing yards. They clamped down on the run. Let me see how many attempts they had. Bring up the second half stats. Second half, Carolina, they had 12 rushing attempts, and they averaged 2.2 yards per carry. First half, they averaged 5.3 yards per rushing attempt. So, improvement there, and they just keep getting better. Let's see. XX Cohan XX says, this year's been wild. Not during Cincinnati or West Virginia or this game was I worried that we couldn't come out on top. What a 180. So Cincinnati, I'd be curious what everybody else's roller coaster looks like, right? Because the Cincinnati game, when they're down 21, I'm like, here we go. It's going to be that kind of a season. Thought this offense looked like it had potential, but they stink. And defense has obviously taken a step back from previous years. They might not be terrible, but they're not going to be good enough to overcome this offense. It is not going to be able to get it done. And then they come back and win. And I'll be honest, during the West Virginia game, when they were down 10 with 5 minutes to go, I was like, oh well. They never go undefeated in the non-conference, so should have seen this loss coming. It happens. We know what happened there. So I'll be honest that, from my perspective, I wrote both of those games off in those situations. I didn't sit here thinking, yeah, they'll definitely come back. This game today, I've been talking all this time about how it felt like Pitt really kind of controlled the game. They never let North Carolina get any momentum, and they were, they more or less, they were in control. They didn't dominate, but they were in control of the game from the start. I think part of my feeling that they were in control was that I just sort of felt like, yeah, their offense will just keep making plays. Pitt's offense will just keep coming up with plays. And by the time you get to the second half, their defense will step up a little bit. And that's what happened. The offense just kept making plays. Defense stepped up in the second half. Eli Holstein made some great plays, and defense stepped up. Defense got the stops. And it all, So I think I had a certain confidence throughout this game. I'm not sure it really waned because it never felt like Carolina was really able to take control of it. So I guess I'm getting on board with that too. We'll see next week's Cal game. If it's the first quarter and Pitt's down 10-0, we'll see how we feel then. But yeah, I kind of agree. Kenny Gizmo says Pitt needs to offer a new contract to Cade Bell in an attempt to keep him here long term. This team's very exciting to watch, and that's what will attract the top recruits and transfers. Yeah, I don't know. Like, I got to be honest. There's so much conversation about, keeping Cade Bell long term, keeping Eli Holstein past this year. Like, are you going to be able to do this? You're going to be able to do that? What are they? I got to be honest, man. Like, I just don't find myself thinking about those things. And I think part of it is like, we're at a point now, college sports, football and basketball, where like tomorrow really isn't promised to anyone. Like, you don't know what your roster is going to look like next year. You don't know who you're going to have. You don't know what you're going to be able to do. I mean, like last year this time, it's October 5th, right? Let me look at last year's schedule. Where was Pitt on October 5th? Okay, so October 5th, all right? They were in the off week between the Virginia Tech and Louisville games. Let's push it forward 10 days. Let's say it's October 15th, after the Louisville game, all right? They beat Louisville on October 14th with Christian Bear. And probably coming out of that game, we all sat here. I mean, I could go back and rewatch the post-game show, and I'm sure we all sat here and said, this is it. They are set. They're going to go into next year. They got Christian Bear. He's a good quarterback. They're going to have, Kanate Mumfield and Kenny Johnson. Those guys are good. Rodney Hammond is legit. Like this team, they're going to, Deion Hayes and DeAndre Jules will be leading the pass rush. Kamara and DeShields will be really amped up on the outside. They'll be ready to go. And all, like, we probably thought those things like 51 weeks ago, that we thought of what we thought the 2024 season would be. And now look, different quarterback, different running back, got the receivers, but you've got a couple other guys who are a big part of it. New defensive line, new outside linebacker. Like, you don't know what that team is going to be. You really don't. And so I've found myself, and this probably is for the last year or so, maybe more, I'm very like tunnel vision, very, very sort of singularly focused on what's happening right now. And this basketball team, like this basketball season coming up, like you will not really find me talking or thinking much about, well, if they can bring Jalen Lowe back next year, or if they got Amsal Delalich back, or when they, Guillermo or Cam Corner or whatever. Like, no, man, there's this year. All right, there's this year, and that's it. And I don't think you can think much beyond that, because you just don't know what's going to happen. Will Eli Holstein say at Pitt? I don't know. I think so, but I don't know. Like when we get into questions of NIL and coaching contracts, there will always be someone who can outbid Pitt. And that's not a knock on Pitt. That's the case for like 70 or 80 or 90 or 100 or maybe even 115 FBS schools, that there's always someone who can outbid you. There are very few schools, we might be able to count them on two hands, that cannot be outbid. And Pitt's not one of them. And so if that's what it comes down to, whether it's for Holstein or Bell or Jalen Lowe or whoever it is, if it comes down to where's the most money, where's the biggest bag, then they're going to be somewhere else. And that's players and coaches. They're going to be somewhere else if that's what ends up deciding it. Everybody good who Pitt has, football and basketball, over the last 2 years, has taken a discount to be here. They could have gotten more money somewhere else. And that's guys who returned to the football team, guys who transferred to the football team, guys who returned to the basketball team, guys who transferred to the basketball team. They could have gotten more somewhere else, but they chose to be here for a variety of reasons. The fit, the scheme, the relationships, whatever it might be. Okay, so when we talk about, do you think they're going to be able to keep Eli Holstein next year? I don't know. Do you think they're going to be able to keep Cade Bell next year? I don't know. And even if I had someone very close to Eli Holstein, someone who came up to me, like if I got a text message right now and it said, Chris, I literally just talked to Eli and he said, I don't care if someone offers me $10 million, I'm going to be at Pitt next year. I would still say, well, we'll see. Not because of anything I think about Eli Holstein, but just because I don't think you can count on anything. There's this year, and that's it. And so whatever they do this year is what they do this year. Okay? And that applies to Holstein. That applies to Bell. That applies to the receivers. That applies to the linebackers. That applies to anybody who's doing anything good this year. Will they be here this year, or will they be here next year? I don't know. So enjoy what they can do this year. Sign Cade Bell to a long-term contract. Whatever. I mean, contracts are contracts. And we've seen that they don't hold up. So who knows what those guys are going to do? Who knows where they're going to be next year? All I know is right now, right here, October 5th, 8:30 p.m. on a Saturday night, with my whiskey on this side and my beer over here, with my home field apparel Pitt is it shirt, what I know, the only thing I know is Pitt is 5-0, and they've got a guy who is no worse than the third best quarterback in the ACC, a guy who is no worse than the third best running back in the ACC, a bunch of receivers who nobody else in the conference might be able to name any of them, and they're making plays week after week after week. They've got a guy who might be one of the top 5 linebackers in the ACC, and they've got a defensive line that's emerging, that's getting better. Oh, and did I mention they're 5-0? So I just have no thoughts on where these guys will be next year. All I have thoughts on is where they are right now. Where they are is 5-0. See if any other super chatters came in. You guys want to make sure your comments get read, your questions get answered. You can be a super chatter. We're past that hour mark, and we're going to go for a little while. But we've got a lot of comments in here. You want to make sure we read your comment or answer your question. Be a super chatter, and we will be sure to get to it. Mark Shilaju on the matter of the defense says, let's not forget that Pitt's defense was on the field a lot in the first half because Pitt's offense was scoring a lot. First half, yeah, Carolina had about a 4.5 minute advantage of time of possession. Not crazy. Pitt's drives, 3.5 minutes, 3 minutes, 43 seconds on a 3-and-out, minute and a half on a 91-yard touchdown drive, minute 16 on a 75-yard touchdown drive, which is pretty exciting. I mean, like, that drive, they went 91 yards in 93 seconds. I mean, excuse me, literally like a yard per second. If you could run 1 yard per second, that's effectively how fast they scored on that drive. It's ridiculous. So, yeah, they scored a lot. Pitt's defense on the field a decent amount. Not crazy, but a decent amount for sure. Pitt Tough Guy says there's a common theme here. Cincinnati had Corey Kiner. West Virginia had C.J. Donaldson. North Carolina had Omarion Hampton. Those teams all were in the game late, but they went away from their stud running backs against Pitt's weak spot, the defensive line. Brain fart or brain cramps? Yeah, maybe. I agree with you. I mean, I think those were guys that, Pitt wasn't stopping. Pitt didn't stop Corey Kiner. Pitt didn't stop C.J. Donaldson. Pitt didn't stop Omarion Hampton. All three of those teams, Cincinnati, West Virginia, and North Carolina, respectively, kind of stopped themselves. And I'm not really sure why. Again, this Carolina game was never more than a 1-touchdown game until the final 2 minutes. I don't know why you wouldn't ride Hampton more. He's the best running back in the ACC, one of the best overall players in the conference. But, hey, we take it, right? Super chatter here, Jim Nething just says, hail to Pitt. Hey, appreciate it. He also said, great sermon, Chris. Yeah, sorry about that. Sometimes I get on a bit of a rant. Talkies Pitt says, this game was closer than I was hoping for, but a 2-possession game, like I said, they would get is okay with me. I didn't have a prediction on this game. The closest thing I came to a prediction, I was on this North Carolina podcast. These guys who cover Carolina, they're like the Carolina version of the Loyal Sons, but they're not nearly as cool as the Loyal Sons, because who is, right? But I was on this podcast with these guys, and they're like, do you have a prediction? I was like, I don't really make predictions because I'm terrible at it. But I would say this. When there's something that historically has never happened, I have a hard time predicting that it will happen. So Pitt being 0-7 winning in Chapel Hill all time. Pitt being 0-4 in Chapel Hill since joining the ACC. I have a really hard time picking Pitt to win at all. Now, when it came to picking against the spread on the message boards, I picked Pitt to cover because ultimately I thought Pitt would win. But it was hard for me to make that prediction because they never won there. It's a tough place to win. And so I certainly wasn't going to predict that they would win by 2 scores, but that's what they ended up doing. Oh, here's something I calculated. Pitt now, since joining the ACC, has 16 wins, conference wins, on the road by double digits. Now that's talking about like 11 seasons in one game. Like 2013 through 2023, that's 11 seasons plus today's game. So 11 seasons and one game. I guess that'd be 44, 45, 46 games they've played on the road in conference play, I think. And they've won 16 of those by double digits. Today was number 16. Here's something funny. 16 games where they've won on the road by double digits in conference play. 3 of those were at Georgia Tech. All right, I get that. 2 were at Duke. Okay. I understand that. 3 were at Virginia. Kind of understand that. Two of Pitt's two of Pitt's wins on the road in conference play by double-digit scores. 2 of them were at Miami. Is that like they had the game in 2014 where they won by 12, and there was the game 2 years ago where they won by 26. Pitt has won twice in Miami since the Kennedy assassination. And both of them were by double-digit scores, 2014 and 2022. But I thought that was a weird thing. They've also won, obviously they won at Carolina today by 10. They won at Virginia Tech in 2021. Every road game in 2021, every road conference game, they won by double digits. They beat Virginia Tech by 21 that year. They've won at Boston College by 10, the 2014 game. They won at Syracuse, again, in 2021. They won that game by 17. It's the only time they've won by double digits up there. They won at Wake Forest in 2018, the game where they clinched the Coastal. They won that one by 21. And then in 2020, they beat Florida State down there by 24 points. So 16 games on the road in conference play that they've won by double-digit points. Today was number 16. Cohan says, it's fun watching a college offense that's creative. The defense will continue to figure it out as long as they bend and don't break when it's needed. Offense will keep us in it. Yeah, I agree. Tar Heels for Life says, congrats on the win, Pitt fans. Y'all were the better team, and good luck rest of the year. Hey, you know what? North Carolina fans, they're nothing if not polite, They got their fancy sweaters. They, blah, blah, blah. You can make your jokes about Carolina fans. But shout out to you, friend. Appreciate you checking in on the live stream. Let's see here. Well, you guys have already commented. Pete Havern says, good call on the 2016 defense comparison. The base system itself relies on a pressure and solid DBs with linebackers as a gap filler. Seems like our linebackers are the strength this year, just need to adjust. Yeah, they do. I think, again, I thought it was a step forward today, at least in terms of the pass rush. I thought the pass rush was pretty effective today, more effective than it's been all season. And so, I don't think it changed the game. I don't think it was the reason they won. And it's still not as good as it needs to be. It's not as consistent as it needs to be. They need to get into the backfield and get the plays. They need to get the quarterbacks down. Now, they've faced a couple mobile quarterbacks. I think Jacoby Criswell can move around a little bit. He was able to avoid pressure a few times. Obviously, Garrett Green can run. But they need to get the quarterbacks down more than they have. But on the whole, I thought the pass rush was better. And and should keep getting better. But we'll see. Green says Clemson and SMU are the real deal ACC-wise. Yeah, it certainly seems like that. Clemson now is up 20-7 on Florida State. SMU, like we said, won at Louisville by a touchdown. Elsewhere in the conference, Virginia beat Boston College at home 24-14. Wake Forest went to NC State and got their first conference win of the year, their second win overall of the season, 34-30. Virginia blew out Stanford on the road, 31-7. I thought Stanford would win that game. I kind of thought Virginia Tech looked like it might be a fraud. Did I say Virginia? Virginia Tech is the team. I thought Virginia Tech looked like they might be a fraud. Kyron Jones still only threw for 201 yards. Bashal Tutin ran for 73. Tech only had 136 yards on the ground, so still not a real outburst, but they were able to get the win. Currently, Georgia Tech is leading Duke in the second quarter. Tech at home there. And then Clemson, like we said, they're up 20-7 at Florida State. They were 15-point favorites. I picked Florida State to cover in that game. Clemson might be lining up for a field goal here soon, so maybe that cover is in danger. But it's the end of the first half. First half is about to end. Let's see. Get back onto the super chats here. Mark Thurkel says, my sons don't understand why teams like Penn State are top 10 while Pitt is also undefeated and unranked with a similar strength of schedule. Is Pitt's only chance to make the playoffs to win the ACC? Yeah, probably. I mean, as it relates to the rankings, I was actually explaining this to my sons today, that, you know, the polls through the first 5-6 weeks of the season, a lot of it is still just adjusting those preseason rankings. So the preseason polls were this, and then everything moves based off of that. I think there are probably very few AP voters who, after 2 or 3 weeks, just do a complete reset of what they think the polls should be. Everything is, well, they lost, move them down a couple more. They lost, move them down a couple more. They won, move them up a couple more. And so you end up with, like, Penn State started the season top 10. They're 5-0. They're still top 10. Pitt started the season well outside the top 25. They're 5-0. They're climbing back. They'll be ranked this week. They should be ranked this week, and I expect them to be ranked this week. But they started where they started, so they got a bigger hill to climb. Is winning the ACC Pitt's only chance at the playoffs? No. I think if they went undefeated and lost in the ACC championship game, they'd probably get in. Maybe even if they went 11-1 and lost in the ACC championship game. I'd be curious to see if an 11-2 ACC team could make it. But for now, we know they're 5-0, right? One win away from bowl eligibility, baby. But thank you, Mark, for being a super chatter. We appreciate you. If anybody else wants to jump in as a super chatter, now's the time to do it. Scroll back up into some more comments and questions. ZC717 says, we've been spoiled the last few years with studs on the defensive line: Patrick Jones, Jalen Twyman, Desmond Alexander, Rashad Weaver, John Morgan, Kalijah Cansey. Not sure Morgan fits in that group, but yeah, I mean, I think that's part of it too, especially when we look at defensive tackle production. You've had guys like Cansey and Twyman. You've had these guys who go out and get, 10 sacks. And I'm not sure if there's a 10-sack defensive tackle on this team, at least right now. Maybe Isaiah Neal becomes that down the road. Maybe Sean Fitzsimmons could be that down the road. Probably not in the season where he misses 4 games, but still, maybe down the road. I don't know if you have an obvious candidate to be the next Cansey or Twyman, but Cansey's and Twyman's and Donald's are unique. They don't come around very often. We've been a little spoiled around here to see that caliber of player at Pitt multiple times. I mean, you could even go back to like Mick Williams in 2009, had like 8 or 9 sacks out of the defensive tackle position. Same kind of guy, you know what I mean? And then obviously Aaron Donald, then Jalen Twyman and Kalijah Cansey. I mean, you start to think this is what that position is supposed to be, and you'd like it to be that, but it's not always going to be that. And so it's a little bit, I do think, Pitt fans are a little spoiled with defensive line play, but you can also, at the same time, expect more than you've gotten so far. Talkus Pitt says Fitzsimmons should start. I mean, I think he started today, didn't he? I feel like he started today. Yeah, Fitzsimmons started today. I would imagine he'll start going forward. And he played a ton. Defensive snaps. Trying to look through on Pro Football Focus. They have the snaps posted. Oh, I'm not looking at the right game. I was looking at the Kent State game. I'm like, why is Sean Fitzsimmons not listed here? Yeah, Fitzsimmons played a bunch. I mean, he played, according to Pro Football Focus's early stats, he played 40 snaps at defensive tackle, one behind Nikai Johnson, and those were the top 2 defensive tackles in terms of snaps. Isaiah Neal right after them, and then Elliott Donald behind him. That's probably how I would order it. You know what I mean? And then adjust once you get Nick James back into the mix. But that's probably how I would order it. Johnson and Simmons playing the most, Neal after that, and Donald behind them. So I think they had a pretty good rotation and the kind of rotation you would want to see. Let's see. Pete Havern says the defense always has an aspect of aggression and havoc, like snorting coke and jumping out of an airplane. As long as you land, it's awesome. Yeah, I got to say that's the first time I've ever heard that analogy used for anything. Certainly Pitt defense, first time I've ever heard that, but sure, why not? Okay. Snorting coke and jumping out of an airplane. You're wild, man. You're wild, Pete. Royce Beacom says, I think Mac Brown's play calling had a lot to do with Pitt's defensive results looking so good. 2 times inside the Pitt 10-yard line could have meant 6 field goal points. Yeah, could have. Could have. And then the final score would have been 34-30 instead of 34-24. So Mac Brown went for it. He probably needed to go for it. He probably knew that field goals weren't going to win that game, which is why he went for it. And Pitt made the stop both times. You know what I mean? Pitt came up on 4th and 1, 4th and 2, inside the 10, and made the stop. Mark Sholoju says, everyone seems to forget Pitt left points on the field with Carter's drop on the first drive. Can anyone explain why he was in on that play? Yeah, that's a play that I definitely circled because that's a touchdown. You know what I mean? That's a touchdown. It's 2nd and goal from the 6. Desmond Reed carried the ball on the play before that. I don't know if he needed to come out. He got hurt or something. 2nd and goal from the 6. Little throw to the flat for Daniel Carter, leaking out of the backfield. And he just dropped it. And he had an open path. He had an open path to the end zone. It was going to be a touchdown, and he just dropped the ball. So, it's not Youngstown State anymore, I guess is what I would say. Let's see. Peninsula P says, thanks. Been a Pitt fan for 22 years and can't believe this is the first time we've been 5-0 in that period. Yeah, it's been 33 years, right? Since 1991. So it's been a long time. Rich Campsey says, why was number 74 Terrence Enos in at tackle toward the end of the game? That's a great question. I'm not sure. I can only assume Branson Taylor got hurt. I didn't see Taylor get hurt. I don't know when that happened. I didn't even notice the sub when Enos came in. I didn't notice the first play. I think by the time I noticed, he had already been in on the field. But I'm I'm not sure. I can only assume it was an injury situation. Let's see. Scrolling down here, see if there's anybody. TVAX1 says El Barto needed to get upfield on the one catch over the middle where he came up short on a critical late drive. Yeah, that was weird. Let's see if I can find that play. Gavin Bartholomew caught a pass, and it looked like he had the first down, but he caught it and then ran back and ended up not getting the first down. He only had a 9-yard catch on it. Trying to see where that play was. Oh well. Oh, here it was on the final drive. It was 2nd and 10 at the 30. And they threw Holstein threw to Gavin Bartholomew. He caught it and then ran back to try and get around the defender to get upfield and score, get a bigger gain. Ended up getting tackled for only a 9-yard gain on 2nd and 10. So it was 3rd and 1. That was Desmond Reed ended up picking up the first down, so they still converted it. It didn't kill them, but he made a mistake there. Let's scroll here. see what else we have. I don't know. My computer's going really slow, so I really apologize. I apologize for being slow on this. Yeah, I don't know what's going on with that. But anyway, there's a question here. Was the center injured? Yeah, Lyndon Cooper did get hurt, but I think he came back in. I think he was in on the final drive, late in the final drive. I think Terrence Moore might have started it, and they subbed Cooper in. But I remember seeing 56 on the field during the final drive. You know, they also seem to rotate Jason Collier and Ryan Jacoby a decent amount at left guard. And that I thought that was interesting. I assume it was on kind of a intentional rotation, a designed rotation. So they kind of went back and forth. I didn't notice either one of them being, you know, a liability or particular strength or anything like that. I mean, I think, yeah, we'll see if they decide to continue doing that going forward. I know they felt good about Ryan Jacoby starting the season. When Jacoby got hurt, they felt good about Jason Collier replacing him. And so maybe that rotation will keep up. As far as Lyndon Cooper, we'll see what his availability is going forward. Let's see. Andrew Biggins says Pitt over 5.5 wins may be the best bet I've ever placed. Knock on wood. Yeah, we'll knock on that. Michael Thomas says another good game for Mumfield. Yeah, Konate Mumfield just continues to have big games. 3 catches for 111 yards this year. That's his, or today. That's his, I think, second 100-yard game of the season. Bring up the receiving. Yeah, he had 5 for 123 at Cincinnati, and now he's got 3 for 111 today at North Carolina. Maybe it's just on the road. Konate Mumfield will have a 100-yard game on the road every time Pitt goes on the road. So maybe that's what it could be. Scott Smith says, what do you see as the main reason for the lack of involvement for Gavin Bartholomew? Is it scheming or is he just not getting open? I don't know. He actually talked about this week during the morning Pitt, that if you look at his targets and his receptions, he's on pace for the most targets of his career. He's on pace for the most receptions of his career. So it's not a complete lack of usage or intentional. I think he's just not getting that much out of the plays where he gets the ball. You know what I mean? So they went to him today a couple times. He had a catch or two. My computer, again, giving me trouble, and I apologize if we end up buffering through this. People say it's not the case. Hopefully we're connecting to the stream here. This is getting pretty frustrating, so we're probably going to wrap it up soon. But I'm not sure. The other thing, too, about Gavin Bartholomew is, I think he should get the ball. I think he can make plays. I think he can be a real asset for the offense. But they also have Konate Mumfield, Desmond Reed, Kenny Johnson, Poppy Williams, Sincere Lee. They have other guys who should get the ball, too. They have other guys who I think can make a lot of big plays and do a lot of good things with the ball in their hands. And so, yeah, I'm the biggest El Barto guy that you're going to find. You guys know that, but pretty big fan of getting the ball to Konate Mumfield and those other guys too. Let's see. Luke Olszewski says, will Pitt get ranked? Yes, sir. Yes, they will. I think they'll come in somewhere in the 20s. They'll be a 5-0 team and with an opportunity to climb into the teens and maybe the top 15 if they could beat Cal next week. Of course, if Cal beats Miami tonight and then Pitt beats Cal next week, that would be the best case scenario to bump up Pitt's rankings after 6 games. But it's a heck of a start to the first 5. Pitt goes 5-0 to start the season with a 34-24 win at North Carolina, their first win in Chapel Hill ever. And we were all here to watch it. And more importantly, we were all here to talk about it after the game. So thanks, everybody, who tuned in tonight. We'll have another post-game show next week after the Cal game. I'll get you a more precise start time, probably 9 o'clock or 8 o'clock, something like that. It'll be an evening game. But, if we're going to have our Backshore Apparel shot of the game and, have some drinks, we want to do it a little bit later. You don't always want to do that middle of the afternoon. But anyway, Pitt wins. They're 5-0. Should be another good week for you Pitt fans. We'll have a lot to talk about for sure on the Morning Pitt here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. So make sure you like this video and subscribe. youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com to never miss any of our Pitt video content. I'm going to wrap up here. I'm going to head over to Panther-Lair.com. You should do the same thing to get all of our Pitt coverage. Jim Hammond is in North Carolina. He's got a lot of good stuff coming out of Chapel Hill. So go check it out. Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com for all the Pitt sports news you can handle. Pitt wins. They're 5-0. And Pitt fans, you can have a great weekend. So I hope you do have a great weekend. Hope your fantasy football teams do well. And we will talk to you on Monday morning for the Morning Pitt right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.